The old alien looked at the screens around him and felt his heart break. Admiral Kethfer had lived for over 400 years, and he had never seen his people so afraid. The great Zeltharian Empire that once ruled 12 star systems was dying. The enemy ships filled the space around their home world like angry insects, eating everything they touched. "Sir, the shields are failing," said Commander Velton from across the control room. His voice shook as he spoke. The power stations on the south continent just went dark. Kethfer closed his eyes for a moment. 3,000 years of history were about to end. The Devourers had come from the dark space between the stars, and they wanted everything. They ate planets, ships, and people. Nothing could stop them. The Empire's mighty war fleets were gone. Most of their worlds were already consumed. "Send the message," Kethfer said quietly. Sir Velton turned to look at him. "Send the help signal to every world we know. Every race, every government, every group with ships and weapons." The Admiral's voice grew stronger. "Tell them the Zeltharian Empire asked for help." Velton's face showed shock. In all their long history, the Zeltharians had never asked anyone for help. They were proud and strong. They solved their own problems. But now they had no choice. "Admiral," the Galactic Council already said no. "They voted to block off our space instead of fighting. The Centauri Federation said their ships are busy somewhere else. Even our old friends the Meridians stopped talking." "To us, I know," Kethfer said. "But maybe someone out there still remembers what it means to help others. Extend it to everyone, even to the new races." "The humans?" Velton asked. "But sir, they barely have any ships. They only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago." "Send it to them too." Far away in a different part of the galaxy, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat in front of his computer screens in the Deep Space Listening Station on Luna Base. His job was boring most of the time. He listened to radio signals from across the galaxy, looking for anything important. Most days he heard nothing but static and old messages bouncing around space. But today was different. The signal came in strong and clear, cutting through all the background noise. Jake sat up straight as his computer started working to translate the alien language. The machine had learned many alien languages over the years, and this one was in the database. As the words appeared on his screen, Jake felt his blood turn cold. "This is Admiral Kethfer of the Zeltharian Empire Fleet Command. Our worlds are under attack by an enemy that cannot be stopped. They consume everything in their path. Our fleets are destroyed. Our people are dying. We have asked our allies for help, but they have turned away from us. This is our final message to all who can hear us. Please, if there is anyone out there with ships and weapons, we beg you to come. The coordinates of our home system follow this message. Time is running out." Jake read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Then he reached for his communication device. "Luna Base to Earth Command. Priority message. Coming through. I need to speak with Director Campbell right now." 20 minutes later, Director Lisa Campbell was reading the same message in her office on Earth. She was a tough woman who had worked her way up through the military and space program. She had seen a lot of things in her career, but this alien message made her hands shake. She called General Ryan Clark immediately. "Ryan, we need an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council." "Now, what's the situation, Lisa?" "We just received a distress call from an alien empire. They're being destroyed by some kind of enemy, and they're asking everyone in the galaxy for help." There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, General Clark spoke. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that a proud alien race is begging strangers for help. The message says their allies have already abandoned them. I'll call the council meeting for 1 hour from now. Can you get Captain Turner and the other ship commanders there? Already on it?" 1 hour later, the emergency meeting began. Room was filled with the most important people in Earth's government and military. They all listened as the alien message played through the speakers. When it finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. "So let me understand this," said President Maria Santos. "An alien empire that has existed for thousands of years is asking us for help. We have 17 ships, most of which have never been in a real fight. And you want us to fly across the galaxy to fight an enemy that destroyed their entire fleet?" General Clark nodded. "That's about right, Madam President. Sounds like suicide, said Admiral Patricia Hayes, the head of the Space Navy. But Captain Alex Turner, the youngest person in the room, stood up. With respect, Admiral, maybe that's exactly why we should go. Everyone turned to look at him. Ow. Turner was only 35 years old, but he commanded the newest and most advanced ship in Earth's small fleet. He had trained his whole life for the day when humanity would face its first real test in space. Explain yourself, Captain, President Santos said. For 50 years, we've been preparing for the day when we would join the galactic community. Built ships, trained crews, and learned everything we could about the other races out there. But we've never proven ourselves. We've never shown what humanity stands for. Turner looked around the room at all the worried faces. This alien empire is dying and no one will help them. Everyone else is too afraid or too busy or too selfish, but we're not. We're the species that sends rescue ships into storms. We're the people who run into burning buildings to save strangers. This is who we are. Captain Turner, General Clark said carefully, this isn't a burning building. This is an interstellar war against an enemy we know nothing about. That's true, sir. But if we don't go, who will? If we let an entire civilization die because we're scared, what does that make us? The room fell silent again. Finally, President Santos spoke. How long would it take to get our ships ready? 72 hours, Admiral Hayes answered. But Madam President, I have to advise against this. We could lose everything. Or we could save everything, Turner said quietly. For them and for us. President Santos looked at each person in the room. These were the people she trusted to make the hardest decisions. They were scared, and they had good reason to be. But she could see something else in their eyes, too. Hope, pride, the same thing that had driven humans to explore every corner of their own world and then reach for the stars. Prepare the fleet, she said. We're going to answer their call. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system one more time. Earth Command, we're receiving another message from the Zeltharian system. It's much weaker than the first one. Put it through, Director Campbell said. The new message was short and filled with static, but the words were clear enough. This is Admiral Kethfer. If anyone receives this message, please hurry. You don't have much time left. Captain Turner looked at the other officers around him. In 72 hours, they would find out what humanity was really made of. 3 days later, 17 human ships left Earth's solar system together. It was the largest group of vessels humanity had ever sent into deep space. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the TDF Resilience, watching the stars change as they jumped through hyperspace. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, checking systems and preparing for whatever they would find. The journey to Zeltharian space would take 5 days. Turner used that time to study everything they knew about their new allies. The Zeltharians were an old race, much older than humans. They looked like tall lizards that walked on 2 legs, with tough scales and large eyes. Their technology was far ahead of human science in most ways, but their ships and weapons followed patterns that the enemy had learned to fight. Captain Kate Phillips commanded the science ship TDF Discovery. She spent the journey working with her team to understand the enemy they would face. The Devourers were unlike anything in human records. They seemed to be part machine and part living creature. They ate everything they found and used it to make more of themselves. The scary thing is how smart they are, Dr. Michelle Rodriguez told Turner during one of their planning meetings. They're not just mindless eating machines, they learn and adapt. Every time someone tries a new weapon or tactic against them, they figure out how to counter it. Colonel Ben Parker led the ground. Forces on the transport ship TDF Guardian. His soldiers were trained for fighting on planets and space stations, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Parker was a practical man who believed in preparing for the worst. He had his troops drilling every day during the journey, practicing. Fighting in zero gravity and hostile environments. The way I see it, Parker told his officers, we're walking into a meat grinder. But that's what we signed up for. Our job is to buy time for the civilians and maybe figure out how to hurt these things. On the 4th day of the journey, they received another message from Admiral Kethfer. This one was even weaker than the last. full of static and barely understandable. "Human fleet, if you can hear this, we are grateful you are coming. But you should know what you face. The Devourers have taken 6 more worlds since we last spoke. Their numbers grow every day. We have perhaps 48 hours before our final. Defenses fail. Please be careful. Do not throw your lives away for nothing." Turner called a meeting of all his ship captains. They gathered on the Resilience using hologram technology so everyone could see and hear each other, even though they were on different ships. "You all heard the message," Turner said. "We're running out of time and the situation is getting worse. Anyone who wants to turn back can do so now with no shame. This isn't what we trained for." Captain Phillips spoke first. "My science team thinks we might have an advantage the Zeltharians don't know about. Our technology works differently than theirs. Maybe the enemy hasn't learned to fight our kind of weapons yet." "That's a big maybe," said Captain Nicole Brooks, who commanded the fast attack ship TDF Vanguard. "Oh, but I didn't come this far to turn around now." One by one, each captain voted to continue the mission. They were scared, but they were also determined. This was humanity's first real test in the galaxy, and they would not fail. When they finally reached the edge of Zeltharian space, what they saw made everyone stop talking. The area was full of debris from destroyed ships and space stations. Whole planets looked dark and lifeless. And everywhere they looked, they could see the enemy ships moving like clouds of metal locusts. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Davis from her position at the sensor station. "How many of them are there?" "Thousands," came the reply from Chief Engineer Danny Chen. "Maybe tens of thousands. And they're all heading toward the same place." That place was Zelthar Prime, the Zeltharian homeworld. The planet was still there, but it was surrounded by a thick shell of enemy ships. Energy beams flashed between the planet and the attacking force as the last defenses fought to stay alive. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer from the Zeltharian fleet. Admiral Kethfer appeared on their main screen. He looked older and more tired than in his previous messages. Behind him, alarms were going off, and crew members were running around trying to keep their ship working. "Human vessels, you came," he said, and Turner could hear surprise in his voice. "I did not think anyone would answer our call. We keep our promises," Admiral Turner replied. "What's your situation?" "Bad and getting worse. We have maybe 12 ships left that can still fight. Orbital stations are failing one by one. The enemy has learned to counter all our weapons and defenses. We estimate 6 hours before they break through to the planet's surface." Turner looked at his own fleet status. 17 ships against thousands of enemies. "It seemed impossible, Admiral. We're going to need to work together. Our ships are smaller and weaker than yours, but our technology is different. Maybe we can surprise them." "Captain Turner, with respect, you do not understand what we face. These creatures adapt to every tactic we try. They learn from every battle. Your brave gesture will only add your ships to the graveyard." "Maybe," Turner said. "But we didn't come here to run away at the first sign of trouble. Let's combine our forces and see what we can do." Admiral Kethfer was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. That you must understand. We Zeltharians are a proud people. We have never needed help from others. This is difficult for us. We understand pride, Admiral. But right. Now, pride won't save your people. Working together might." The next few hours were busy as the two fleets tried to coordinate their efforts. The Zeltharian ships were larger and more powerful, but they were also predictable. The human ships were smaller and used different kinds of weapons and engines. Most importantly, they fought in ways the enemy had never seen before. Dr. Rodriguez made the first important discovery. "Captain, I've been studying the enemy movement patterns. They're not random. These things communicate with each other constantly, sharing information about every weapon they face. But there might be a delay in how fast they learn." "What kind of delay?" Turner asked. "Yeah. If we can hit them with something completely new, something they've never seen before, we might have a few minutes before they figure out how to defend against it." "A few minutes isn't much time. It might be enough if we use it right." The plan they came up with was simple, but dangerous. The human ships would attack first, using their unique weapons and tactics to confuse the enemy. This would hopefully create an opening for the Zeltharian ships to strike at the most important enemy vessels. "It's not much of a plan," Colonel Parker said during the final briefing, "but it's better than sitting here waiting to die." "Remember," Turner told all his captains, "we're not trying to win this fight by ourselves. We're trying to buy time, and maybe learn something that will help later. So don't take stupid risks, but don't hold back either." As the combined fleet prepared to move toward the enemy, Admiral Kethver sent one final message to the human ships. "Captain Turner, whatever happens in the next few hours, know that the Zeltharian people will remember what you have done. Traveled across the galaxy to help strangers? This is something we had forgotten was possible." Turner looked at his crew, then at the tactical display showing thousands of enemy ships waiting for them. "All ships, this is Admiral Turner. Today we find out what humanity is made of. Let's go show these things what happens when they pick a fight with people who won't give up." The human fleet began moving toward the largest space battle in their history. The first battle began when Commander Steve Rogers led his squadron of human fighters straight into the heart of the Devourer swarm. His small ships moved in ways the enemy had never seen before, spinning and diving like angry wasps. The Devourers tried to target them with their usual weapons, but the human fighters were too fast and too unpredictable. "This is Hawk Leader," Rogers called over the radio. "These things are trying to catch us, but they're thinking too much. They keep trying to guess where we're going next." Lieutenant Amy Davis was flying right behind Rogers in her fighter. She had been an electronic warfare specialist before joining the Space Force, and she had ideas about how to confuse the enemy even more. "Hawk Leader, I'm going to try something. Cover me for 30 seconds. Davis flipped several switches on her control panel and began broadcasting random signals at the Devourer ships. The signals were designed to look like targeting information and weapon commands, but they were actually just noise. The enemy ships started turning toward false targets and firing at empty space. "It's working," Davis shouted. "They're getting confused by the fake signals, but it won't last long." Back on the Resilience, Captain Turner watched the battle unfold on his main screen. The human fighters were doing better than expected, but they were still badly outnumbered. Thousands of Devourer ships were beginning to surround Rogers and his pilots. "Captain Phillips, are you seeing this?" Turner called to the science ship. "Sir, the enemy is trying to learn from what they're seeing, but our fighters are changing tactics too fast. It's like they can't keep up with something that doesn't follow patterns." Captain Nicole Brooks was waiting for her chance. Her ship, the TDF Vanguard, was built for speed and surprise attacks. She had been watching the enemy formations, looking for weak spots. "Turner, I see an opening," Brooks reported. "There's a gap in their left flank. If I can get through there, I might be able to hit some of their command ships." "Do it, but don't get trapped in there." The Vanguard shot forward like a bullet, using its special engines to make sudden turns that would have torn apart a normal ship. Brooks led her ship through the gap in the enemy formation, firing everything she had at the larger Devourer vessels. The enemy ships she hit didn't just explode like normal vessels. Instead, they seemed to melt and reform, trying to repair the damage. But Brooks had loaded her weapons with a special kind of ammunition that Chief Engineer Danny Chen had designed. The bullets were made of materials the Devourers couldn't easily absorb. Direct hits on 3 enemy command ships. Brooks reported they're having trouble fixing the damage. Whatever Chen put in these bullets, they don't like it. Chen was monitoring the battle from the engine room of the Resilience. He had spent years studying alien technology, and he had noticed something important. Most galactic races used energy weapons that the Devourers had learned to absorb. Humans still used kinetic weapons, bullets and shells that hit targets with pure force. "Captain Turner," Chen called over the intercom, "I think I know why we're doing better than expected. These things are used to fighting energy beams and plasma. Cannons. They've never seen good old-fashioned bullets before." Admiral Kethver was watching the human attack from his flagship. He had expected the small human fleet to be destroyed quickly, but instead they were actually damaging the enemy. For the first time in months, he felt something he had forgotten. Existed hope. "All Zeltharian ships follow the humans," Kethver ordered. "Strike while the enemy is confused." Meanwhile, Sergeant Carl Thompson was leading a small team of human soldiers on a secret mission. Thompson had worked in asteroid mining before joining the military, and he had noticed something about the way the Devourers moved. They reminded him of the automated mining ships he had worked with for years. "They're not just eating randomly," Thompson explained to his team as they prepared to board a damaged Devourer ship. "They're following resource patterns. Look at which ships they attack first, which planets they consume. They're going after the richest targets." Thompson's team used cutting tools to break into the disabled enemy vessel. Inside, they found a strange mix of biological and mechanical parts. The ship seemed to be alive, but it also had computer systems and metal structures. "Oh, this is weird," said Private Linda Martinez, one of Thompson's soldiers. "It's like someone took a computer and a giant bug and mixed them together." Thompson was more interested in the ship's navigation systems. If he could understand how the Devourers chose their targets, maybe the humans could use that knowledge against them. Back in space, the battle was getting more intense. The Devourers were beginning to adapt to human tactics, learning to counter their unpredictable movements. Rogers and his fighters were taking heavy fire as more enemy ships joined the fight. "Hawk leader to all human ships," Rogers called out. "We're getting boxed in here. They're learning too fast." But Lieutenant Davis had been working on a new idea. During her time studying electronic warfare, she had learned about something called signal jamming. If she could disrupt the communication between Devourer ships, maybe she could slow down their learning process. "Hawk leader, I need all fighters to form up on me. We're going to try something big." Davis led the human fighters in a tight formation toward the center of the enemy's swarm. As they flew, she activated every electronic warfare system her ship had. The signals she broadcast were designed to overload the communication networks. The Devourers used to share information. For a few seconds, it worked perfectly. The enemy ships stopped coordinating their attacks and began firing in random directions. Some of them even started shooting at each other, unable to tell friend from foe. "Now," Davis shouted. "Hit them while they're confused." The human and Zeltharian fleets struck together, focusing their fire on the largest enemy ships. The Devourers, still struggling with their disrupted communications, couldn't coordinate their defenses effectively. Captain Turner saw his chance. "All ships target the big one in the center. It looks like their command vessel." The combined fleet concentrated their weapons on a massive Devourer ship that was 3 times larger than any other enemy vessel. The ship tried to defend itself, but it was taking fire from too many directions at once. But just as the battle seemed to be turning in their favor, something changed. The damaged command ship began to pulse with a strange light, and suddenly, all the Devourer ships in the area started moving in perfect coordination again. "They're adapting faster than we thought," Dr. Rodriguez reported from the science ship. "That big ship isn't just a command vessel, it's some kind of learning center. Every time we hurt them, it figures out how to counter our attacks." Turner realized they had a serious problem. The Devourers weren't just individual ships fighting separately. They were parts of a larger intelligence that was getting smarter with every battle. Admiral Cuthbert Turner called to his alien ally. "We need to change tactics. This isn't working anymore." Cuthbert had noticed something else. "Captain Turner, look at your sensor readings. The enemy is pulling ships away from the planet. Your attack is drawing them toward us." Turner looked at his tactical display and saw that the Admiral was right. The Devourers were so focused on the human fleet that they were reducing their assault on Zelthar Prime. The planet's defenses were getting a chance to recover. "That's it," Turner realized. "We don't have to beat them in a straight fight. We just have to keep them busy long enough for you to evacuate your people." Captain Cuthbert said quietly, "That would mean sacrificing your fleet to save ours." Turner looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all young humans who had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not come home. But they had also come here to save lives, not to win glory. "Admiral, sometimes the best victory is making sure the other side doesn't win." "How long do you need to get your people off the planet?" 12 hours minimum." Turner checked his ship's status. They had enough fuel and ammunition to keep fighting for maybe 6 hours if they were lucky. "Then we'll buy you 12 hours, Turner said, one way or another. The battle was far from over, but Turner was beginning to understand that winning wasn't always about destroying the enemy. Sometimes it was about making sure something important survived. Major Chris Taylor knew his mission was probably suicide, but he had volunteered anyway. Now the space battle raged above Zelthar Prime. Taylor and his team of 12 soldiers were falling toward the planet's surface in modified entry pods. Their job was to reach the ancient defense grid that had protected the Zeltharian homeworld for thousands of years. The pods cut through the atmosphere like burning meteors, dodging energy beams from Devourer ships that had noticed their approach. Taylor's pod hit the ground hard, bouncing twice before coming to a stop in what used to be a beautiful city park. Now it was a wasteland of broken buildings and strange metallic growths where the Devourers had been feeding. "Sound off," Taylor called into his radio as he climbed out of his damaged pod. One by one, his soldiers reported in. They had lost 3 people during the landing, but 9 was still enough to complete the mission if they were lucky. Lieutenant. Commander Rachel Green was the most important member of the team. Before joining the military, she had been a sound engineer who worked with music and audio systems. The Zeltharians had told them that their ancient defense grid was controlled by harmonic frequencies, specific sound patterns that would activate the old weapons. "The problem is," Green explained as they moved through the ruined city, "the Zeltharians lost the activation codes when their main research facility was destroyed. We have to figure out the right frequencies by ourselves." They reached the entrance to the underground bunker where Zeltharian survivors were hiding. The heavy door was sealed shut, but Taylor's team had brought cutting tools. It took 20 minutes to burn through the metal, and all the while they could hear strange clicking sounds in the distance. The Devourers were getting closer. Inside the bunker, they found about 50 Zeltharian civilians and one very old alien who introduced himself as Elder Historian Morthic. The old Zeltharian's scales were pale with age, and his large eyes were cloudy, but his mind was still sharp, Humans Morthic said in accented English. "You came to help us even though we are strangers. This is something our people had forgotten." "Was possible? Need to get to the Defense Grid Control Center," Taylor said. "Can you show us the way?" Morthic nodded slowly. "Yes, but I must warn you. The activation system requires precise harmonic sequences. Without the correct frequencies, the grid will not respond. And if we try too many wrong combinations, the system will shut down permanently to prevent enemy interference." Grain stepped forward. "I might be able to figure out the frequencies." "How does the system work?" The old historian led them deeper into the bunker, through tunnels carved from solid rock. The walls were covered with strange crystals that hummed softly as they passed. Green noticed that the crystals seemed to respond to their footsteps and voices, glowing brighter when certain sounds were made. "The ancient builders used the natural resonance of these crystal formations," Morthic explained. "The entire planet has a harmonic frequency, like a giant musical instrument. The defense grid taps into this planetary resonance to power itself." They finally reached the control center, a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures and ancient technology. In the center of the room stood a console covered with symbols that Green couldn't read, but she could see patterns in the way the crystals were arranged. Her trained ear could hear the subtle harmonics they produced. "It's like a massive organ," Green said with wonder. "The whole planet is designed to make music." Above them, the space battle was not going well for the human fleet. Captain Turner's ships were running low on ammunition and fuel. The Devourers had adapted to most of their tactics. The human formation was starting to break apart under the constant attacks. "Turner to all ships," the captain called over the radio. "We need to buy more time for the ground team, whatever it takes." Commander Steve Rogers was down to his last few fighters, but he wasn't giving up. "Resilience. This is Hawk Leader. We're going to try something crazy. Tell everyone to get ready for a big distraction." Rogers led his remaining fighters in a desperate charge, straight at the largest Devourer command ship. Instead of trying to fight their way through the enemy defenses, they flew directly into the ship's structure, using their fighters as guided missiles. The explosions caused massive damage to the command vessel, disrupting the coordination of hundreds of Devourer ships. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Rogers and his pilots were gone. Back on the planet's surface, Green was working frantically to understand the harmonic system. She had been listening to the crystal formations for hours, trying to identify the base frequencies that would activate the defense grid. "I think I've got something," she told Taylor. "The crystals are responding to specific musical intervals. It's like the entire system is based on mathematical relationships between sound waves. She began entering commands into the ancient console, using her knowledge of acoustics to guess at the correct frequency combinations. The first few attempts produced nothing but soft humming sounds from the crystals. But on her 7th try, something changed. The crystals throughout the chamber began to glow with bright light, and a deep thrumming sound filled the air. The sound seemed to come from the planet itself, as if Zelthor Prime was waking up after a long sleep. Warning, came Admiral Kethfer's voice over their radio communicator. "We are detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface." "What is happening down there?" "We got it working," Taylor replied. "The defense grid is coming online." All across the planet, ancient weapon systems that had been dormant for centuries began to activate. Massive energy projectors rose from hidden positions in the ground. Shield generators started producing protective barriers around important cities. Most importantly, the planetary resonance system began broadcasting a frequency that the Devourers couldn't absorb or counter. The effect on the enemy was immediate and devastating. The Devourer ships that had been consuming the planet's surface suddenly stopped moving. Their ability to process and adapt to new information was being disrupted by the harmonic interference. "It's working," Dr. Rodriguez reported from the science ship Discovery. "The planetary frequency is jamming their neural networks. They can't coordinate their attacks anymore." But the defense grid needed time to reach full power, and the Devourers were already starting to adapt. Some of the larger enemy ships were pulling back from the planet, trying to get away from the harmonic interference. Captain Turner realized this was their chance. All ships target the Devourers while they're confused. Hit the big ones before they can retreat. The combined human and Zeltharian fleet struck with everything they had left. Energy beams and kinetic weapons tore into the disorganized enemy formation. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were now struggling to defend themselves. Captain Nicole Brooks brought the Vanguard in close to one of the massive command vessels. "This is for Rogers and his pilots," she said grimly, as she fired her main weapons at point-blank range. The enemy ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking several smaller Devourer vessels with it. But even as they celebrated this victory, everyone knew the battle wasn't over. "Captain Turner," came Green's voice from the planet's surface, "the defense grid is at 60% power and rising. But I'm reading massive energy signatures coming. From deep space, more Devourers are on their way." Turner looked at his tactical display. His fleet was down to 11 ships, most of them damaged. They had maybe 2 hours of fighting left in them. The reinforcing Devourer fleet would arrive in 4 hours. Admiral Kethfer Turner called to his Zeltharian ally. "How long do you need to evacuate your people? The defense grid has bought us time, but we still need 6 hours minimum to get everyone off the planet safely." Turner did the math in his head. They needed to hold out for 6 hours, but reinforcements would arrive in 4. His own fleet would probably be destroyed in 2. "All human ships, this is Turner. I need volunteers for a special mission. We're going to take the fight to the enemy reinforcements before they reach the planet. It's going to be a one-way trip." The response was immediate. Every human captain volunteered. "Sir," came the voice of Chief Engineer Danny Chen over the intercom, "I might have an idea that could help. What if we don't try to fight the reinforcements directly? What if we try to lead them away from the planet instead?" Turner listened as Chen explained his plan. It was dangerous and probably wouldn't work, but it was better than just waiting to die. "Do it," Turner ordered. "All ships, prepare for one last mission. We're going to show these things what happens when they mess with humanity." As the human fleet prepared to leave the safety of the planetary defense grid, Major Taylor and his team were still working to bring the ancient weapons to full power. They knew that everything depended on giving the Zeltharians enough time to escape. The final battle was about to begin. Captain Turner's plan was simple, but dangerous. Instead of waiting for the Devourer reinforcements to reach Zelthor Prime, the human fleet would intercept them in deep space. Chief Engineer Danny Chen had figured out how to overload their ship, engines to create massive explosions that might damage or confuse the enemy long enough for the evacuation to finish. "We're not trying to win this fight," Turner explained to his remaining captains over the communication system. We just need to slow them down and make them angry enough to chase us instead of going straight to the planet. The 11 surviving. Human ships left the safety of the planetary defense grid and headed into deep space. Behind them, Admiral Kethfer was coordinating the largest evacuation in Zeltharian history. Hundreds of transport ships were racing to get civilians off the planet before the new enemy fleet arrived. "Human vessels," came Kethfer's voice over the radio. "I cannot find words to express what your sacrifice means to my people. We're giving your lives for strangers." "That's what friends do," Turner replied simply. 2 hours later, the human fleet detected the approaching Devourer reinforcements. There were over 1,000 enemy ships, far more than the humans had ever faced before. The lead vessels were massive, each one the size of a small city. "All ships, remember the plan," Turner ordered. "Hit them fast, hurt them bad, then lead them on a chase. Make them angry." Captain Kate Phillips on the Discovery was the first to open fire. Her science ship wasn't built for combat, but Chen had modified her weapons to fire special projectiles filled with harmonic disruptors. The strange ammunition was designed to interfere with Devourer communication systems. The projectiles struck the lead enemy ship and exploded in bursts of sonic energy. For a few moments, the massive vessel lost coordination with the rest of the fleet. It began firing in random directions, hitting several of its own support ships. "It's working," Phillips reported. "The harmonic disruptors are confusing their neural networks." But the confusion didn't last long. Devourers quickly adapted to the new weapon type and began targeting the Discovery with concentrated fire. Phillips tried to escape, but her ship was hit by multiple energy beams. "Discovery is going down," Phillips called over the radio. "Good luck, everyone." The science ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking several enemy fighters with it. Turner felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay focused on the mission.
"All ships.
Execute Chen's gambit. Overload your engines on my mark." One by one, the human ships began pushing their engines beyond safe limits. The plan was to create a series of massive explosions that would damage the enemy fleet and make them think the humans were more dangerous than they actually were. "Captain, Cole Brooks was the first to reach critical engine failure. This is Vanguard. Engine overload in 10 seconds. See you all in the next life." The Vanguard's engines exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon, destroying dozens of nearby Devourer ships. The enemy fleet suddenly became much more cautious, spreading out their formation to avoid further losses. More importantly, the explosions were making the Devourers angry. Instead of continuing toward Zelther Prime, they began chasing the remaining human ships deeper into space. "It's working," Turner called to Admiral Kethfer. "They're following us." "How much more time do you need?" "For more hours," came the reply. "The transports are loading as fast as they can, but we have millions of people to evacuate." Turner looked at his status display. He had 6 ships left, and they were all running low on fuel and ammunition. For hours seemed impossible, but help came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green, still on the planet's surface, had been working to increase the power of the defense grid. She had discovered that the ancient system could do more than just protect the planet. "Captain Turner," Green called over the radio, "I think I can use the planetary resonance system to help you. The harmonic frequency can be focused into a directed beam." "What kind of beam?" Turner asked as his ship dodged another enemy attack. "Think of it as a giant sonic weapon. If I can target the enemy fleet, the harmonic interference should disrupt their coordination for hours instead of minutes." Green worked frantically at the ancient control console, while Major Taylor and his soldiers held off Devourer ground forces that were trying to break into the defense center. The crystals around her glowed brighter and brighter as she focused the planetary resonance into a tight beam aimed at the enemy fleet in space. When the beam hit, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Devourer ship in the area suddenly stopped moving. Their complex neural networks, unable to process the harmonic interference, simply shut down to prevent damage. "Now," Turner shouted to his remaining ships, "hit them while they're helpless." The human fleet struck with everything they had left. Ships that had been nearly invincible just moments before were now sitting targets. Turner's weapons tore through, enemy hulls like paper. But the humans weren't the only ones taking advantage of the situation. Admiral Kethfer had brought the last of his functional warships to join the battle. "Captain Turner, this is Admiral Kethfer. The evacuation is nearly complete. Allow us to fight alongside you one final time." The combined human and Zeltharian fleets worked together to destroy as many disabled enemy ships as possible. It was the first time in months that the Devourers had been truly helpless. The battle lasted for 3 more hours. When it was over, the massive enemy reinforcement fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing into deep space. The threat to Zelthor Prime was ended. Turner's ship, the Resilience, was badly damaged but still functional. Of the 17 ships that had left Earth, only 4 remained operational. The cost had been terrible, but the mission was a success. Admiral Kethfer Turner called to his alien ally. "What's the status of the evacuation? Complete?" came the reply. "Every civilian who wanted to leave has been transported to safety. Captain Turner, your people have saved an entire civilization." 6 months later, the story of humanity's intervention had spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, embarrassed by their refusal to help the Zeltharians, offered Earth full membership and advanced technology. Other alien races that had never spoken to humans before suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. But the most important change was in the relationship between humans and Zeltharians. The two races had formed a partnership based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. Human innovation combined with Zeltharian knowledge led to breakthroughs in science and technology that neither race could have achieved alone. Admiral Kethfer, now bearing the honorary title of Human Friend, spoke at the ceremony dedicating a new space station built jointly by both species. "The Zeltharian Empire fell," he said to the gathered crowd of humans and aliens. "But from its ashes, something better has grown. We have learned that true strength comes not from conquest, but from the willingness to help others when they need it most." Turner, now promoted to Admiral and commander of the new human Zeltharian Defense Force, stood beside his old ally. The universe was a dangerous place, but it felt a little safer knowing that there were still people willing to answer a call for help. As the ceremony ended, a priority message arrived at the communication center. Another alien species, the Vicarian Republic, was under attack by unknown forces. The message was addressed directly to Admiral Turner. "This is Admiral Alex Turner of the Human Zeltharian Defense Force," he replied without hesitation. "We received your call for help. We're on our way." The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other civilizations in trouble knew they were no longer alone. Turner smiled as he looked at the stars. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or superior technology, but by remembering a simple truth that others had forgotten. Sometimes the most important victory was making sure someone else didn't lose. The rescue mission that had started with 17 ships and a desperate alien plea had become something much larger. It had become hope.